Free agency is mostly over for the Buffalo Bills. They have 10 draft picks in this upcoming draft. We are going to discuss their two most significant positions of needs tonight and prospects that the Bills can draft at those positions of need. Let's go.
Hi, I'm Bills defensive end Greg Rousseau, and you're listening to Nate and the Fellas on Circling the Wagons podcast. Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills. Go Bills!
Where else would you rather be than right here, right now?
Hey, hey, let's go Buffalo! Hey, hey, let's go Buffalo!
The Bills make me wanna.
What is up, Bills Mafia? Welcome to another episode of Circling the Wagons, a Buffalo fan base podcast. I am your host, Nate, guys. Thank you so much for joining us. We are going to discuss Buffalo Bills draft needs, specifically at two of the biggest positions of need, in our opinion. And we want to discuss three players at each position, some prospects, where we think they're going to get drafted, where we think they fit on the team, why we like them. And we're going to show some highlights of them. So some fun stuff, especially if you're following along, streaming, following this on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, wherever you're following us. It's going to be a fun discussion. But I'd like to welcome my co-host, John, to the podcast. John, dude, it is, what are we, less than 4 weeks away to the draft, man. How pumped are you to talk about some Bills draft prospects?
We got draft coming up. This is going to be the year. I guarantee it. 100%.
This is going, it's looking like that. So I've kind of been slightly down on the Buffalo Bills free agency. And I was like, I feel like they've taken a step back in a couple of areas. They've extended, they had some great extensions, which we're going to talk about real quick because that's really the only new Buffalo Bills news this past week since we last talked. But I haven't been huge on the Buffalo Bills free agency class, kind of because of the suspensions, kind of because I think they've taken a step back in a couple of areas. And I was like, well, the Bills don't really like to play rookies. And then I started to track down all the different rookie classes and how many snaps each rookie has played in their first year. And it was a lot more than I thought it was, especially looking at some of the drafts like Tre'Davious White, Deion Dawkins, Josh Allen, stuff like that. Like they're especially highly drafted guys, Tremaine Edmonds, like there are guys on this team that, instantly come in and start and play a lot of snaps. So I think this whole idea of Sean McDermott does not like to play rookies, I think it's somewhat true, but I don't think it's as true as maybe we like to think it is, or I like to think it is at times. So they can definitely get some starters in this draft, some instant playmakers and guys that if they can ball out in their first year, which we think these prospects that we're going to talk about will, then I think that there's a lot of reasons for Bills Mafia to be optimistic. I think this is a good draft at a lot of these positions of need that we're going to discuss. We're going to first go over our big board of Bills needs, and then we're going to say where the draft is the deepest at, and then some players at those positions that we like. So a lot of fun stuff to talk about. This is our draft preview episode, one of the first of this. But John, quick news and notes. Christian Benford just signed a 4-year deal with the Buffalo Bills. It was a 4-year, I believe it was a $64 million contract. I don't have it off the top of my head, but it's somewhere in that range. The Bills reward another player, another draft, develop, and re-sign a player that I think from the very beginning we thought Elam was going to be the one, but we were glad because it was such a deep cornerback draft, hint, hint, nudge, nudge, that we're glad they double dipped that draft, right? And it ended up working out really well because as a 6th-round prospect, Christian Benford has been incredible. One of the best corners in the NFL, definitely in the AFC. And they rewarded him with a draft. And it was a good contract. John, all of these extensions, including Benford, Shakir, even Josh Allen, Greg Rousseau, like they've all been really good values. These guys are, playing at a top level, maybe not top 5, top 10, but sometimes those guys still get top 5 money just because they're available if they want to be. The Bills are keeping these guys and they're keeping them at good value. What do you think of the Benford extension and the fact that they've been able to keep all these guys?
I think it's fantastic. I never would have thought, because one of the first things I texted you guys in our thread was not only the 2025 free agency, but like, oh, look who's going to be 2026 free agents. Bernard and Benford and all these guys, and all of a sudden they extend them all. So I thought it was great. People are hitting on Kyrie Elam and that pick and everything, but they did pick Benford. If they picked Benford in the first round and Kyrie Elam later on, nobody would have batted an eye. But they did in reverse, and that's how it happened to be. And it still worked out, right? They traded Kyrie Elam for a draft pick. So, I'm still good with what they're doing. I do think that you were doing the hint thing. I do think they should draft 2 corners this draft. I think they should draft 2 defensive tackles this draft. And I'm sure we're going to get into that in a little bit.
John, don't give it away, man. You got to tease them. You got to ease into it. You can't just come in all steam. You got to tickle them a little bit.
I'm ready to go.
You're like, I'm done with the foreplay tonight. I just got to get right into it. So yeah, so obviously, a great signing. Like I'm glad you mentioned Bernard. I didn't mention Bernard. These guys, like Shakir, I think is like top 15 wide receiver money. Benford is top 8, top 10, average per year. Still like $10 million less than the top cornerback, on average per year, which I'm super happy about. I was worried when guys were getting 30 million a year that he'd be looking in that range, but he's not. What a steal there. Still have, and such a great idea to re-sign these guys early that Bean's been able to do, because I mean, you get them at a little bit of a discount if you wait, before they're new. I mean, just look at the Cowboys. The Cowboys wait till the last second for all their free agents, and they always kill the market. And since Dak Prescott signed his contract, nobody's beaten that contract, even Josh Allen, because I think the league in general thinks it's absolutely ridiculous. So hats off to Bean for making these extensions work, and for McDermott and the crew creating a culture where these guys do want to come back and not take the most money that they possibly could, because these guys want to be here, and it shows. So enough on that. Real quick, other news is Stefon Diggs signed a 3-year, $69 million deal with the New England Patriots this past weekend, which I was just shocked for a number of different reasons. Not that he signed with the Patriots. I think they needed some guys there, but just for the amount of money. And I'm sure, I haven't looked in the contract deals. I'm sure they can get out after a year or something like that. But I mean, just the idea that you're paying a guy who's 32, just came off a torn ACL less than 6 months ago at this point, when you're signing him to a $69 million deal, which is an average of $23 million per year. Like, that's insane. And I'm happy as a Bills fan. I'm stoked about this. I think this is the greatest signing that the Bills could have hoped for, because he's gonna show up. He's not terrible. Obviously, he's gonna play pretty well, but he is not worth the money. And it reminds me of a time when the Bills had to overpay guys like this and Terrell Owens or whatever just to get them to come to Buffalo. And it's good to see the shoe on the other foot.
Till he's started to lose a step with the Bills his last season, and that's why they traded him. And they got a 2nd-round pick out of it for this year. So we'll see what that turns out to be. But I think the Bills have played it well.
Yeah, for sure. Throughout this whole process, they played it well. So I think we're into it. Let's talk about, before we get into the actual, prospects, we want to talk about where we think the Bills' biggest needs are. Now, if you're following along and streaming, you can see it graphically, but I'll share it for those that are listening only. We have the biggest needs, John, and let me know if you want to change any of them, because we've kind of talked about sometimes things change, man. We're flexible. You got to be flexible thinking. But number one, the biggest need we have right now is cornerback. Cornerback that you mentioned earlier, even though we just gave Christian Benford that huge contract, you like to have 2 starting corners, right? We love Dane Jackson, as he's a familiar face. He's a decent floor, but ideally you do not have Dane Jackson as your CB2, which would be a huge drop off from Rasul Douglas last year, in my opinion. Even if Rasul Douglas took a step back, still a huge, downgrade from Rasul Douglas, which the Bills could still sign Rasul Douglas. I don't believe he's signed anywhere, correct? I don't think Asante Samuel Jr. signed anywhere, but CB2 is their biggest need, in my opinion. That's one of the biggest positions I mentioned. The Bills in free agency taking a step back in certain areas. Cornerback is one of those, in my opinion. So I think it's the biggest need for the Buffalo Bills. If you're not going to get a huge pass rush out of your front four right now, at least on paper, then you need to get better coverage on your back seven so that, you can allow those guys to eventually get to the quarterback. Thoughts on that? Agreements on that?
You can get the graphic. Our first four are defensive linemen and defensive backs, and they kind of play hand in hand in a lot of these things. Like that's our tier one, right? Defensive back, defensive line. They need better pass rush. They need better defensive tackles. I mean, Oliver's good and everything. We like Daquan Jones. He's getting older. Corners, safeties, White's gone. Poyer Hyde, the whole thing. They've been trying defensive end for years. Hopefully Joey Porter or Mike White come in. Like
The only reason I don't have safety up higher is because they basically have the same safety group as last year, but I think Cole Bishop's going to step into that role. So I don't have them higher, but it's still a need for sure. But like you mentioned, corners and defensive line, really need.
Bishop. I like Bishop, but like safety's still there. There's been a lot of turnover.
Yeah.
Let's just say over the last 5-6 years on defense, and it kind of stinks because it's like a chicken and egg kind of thing. It's like they need the pass rush, but maybe they need if they get a lockdown corner that could help that, but then but at the same time they need both, so that kind of stinks.
Yeah, absolutely. So number 2, we have defensive tackle. That's something that, we've discussed, I think mostly because we still want defensive end. That's our number 3 biggest need. I think defensive tackle is one of those things where the Bills have 2 starters. They have Dwayne Carter back up to Ed Oliver. And I think that, we're intrigued by him. I think he could be something, maybe a rotational piece this year if he stays healthy. So we're not as down on that. It's just that kind of, we'll talk about it a little bit later, but again, with pass rush, helping those guys, helping Ed Oliver penetrate, taking pressure off the defensive ends so they get less double teams, stuff like that. And I think if it wasn't for Joey Bosa, in my opinion, being an upgrade over Von Miller, at least if he's healthy, then I think defensive end would be a little bit higher. But right now we have defensive tackle number 2, defensive end number 3. Safety 4, you mentioned. You have the front end and the back end of the defense, the first 4 needs. We have wide receiver at number 5, running back at number 6, punter at number 7, even though they did sign, I think it was Brad Collins or someone from the Bengals today, which I think was just a literal roster guy, because you like to see what other fans say about the player and they're just like, he's terrible. He shakes it all the time. I'm like, okay, well, we've got guys like that before, so just until further notice, he's just another camp body, in my opinion. And then number 8, we have linebacker, and number 9, we have kick returner. Again, I mean, when you're going down to 8 or 9, I mean, rather than get another linebacker kick returner, I mean, why not double dip, right? Like, this is a perfect draft to potentially double dip at a couple of different areas. Like we mentioned, our first 2 needs, you said cornerback, defensive tackle. I would love for them to double dip. And look at this, John, the number 1 deepest position in the NFL draft by some accounts is defensive tackle. Next, going with defensive end at number 2, offensive tackle at number 3, which is not a need for us. I doubt they draft one on day 1 or 2. But I mean, they do have 10 draft picks, so maybe on day 3. But they really like their offensive line, and it is the best unit on their team, especially tackle. I mean, they have 2 really good tackles. So unless they convert a tackle to a guard in a day 3 pick, I don't see them drafting one of them. Do you?
Going to be on that unit, and they've been healthy.
Exactly. And then we have number 4, the deepest positions in the draft, cornerback, and then wide receiver and running back. So 4 out of the top 5 deepest positions in the draft, we have needs for, either really big needs for or intermediate needs for that we can go. So keeping that in mind, when you look at this draft class, you're like, oh, the defensive tackle is really deep. Could you get a guy, a starter, and day 2? For sure. Can you get a starter on day 3? Potentially, you could get a guy that could play opposite, if not a starter on day 3, potentially a guy that could wait in the background and be a rotational piece this year at certain positions, either pass rushing positions or early down, snaps, and to get them in there so that when Daquan Jones, his contract is up next season, they might potentially just have someone in that role. So obviously defensive end's a huge need. We would love to get a starter, maybe not even a starter, just like a depth piece in the end of the first round or second round, third round, or we don't have a third round pick, but 4th round, you get it what I'm saying, and go from there. So John, any thoughts on these before we move on?
You never know with these guys. Like, we get Kyle Williams in the 5th round. You get Christian Benford in the 6th round. You take your chances. You got to think who can all be like, oh, he's not a first or second round pick, so it's gonna after anything after that's gonna be like it could be. You could just throw a dart throw in the 7th round and it could hit. You never know. That's why people are like, oh, they're going to make their roster in the 7th round. Well, you don't know. Like they could draft him and like, oh, he looks really good, so maybe we'll keep him around, that kind of thing. And then
Yeah, I know. I'm glad that you brought up Kyle Williams because that's another example of a double dip, right? They went John McCargo in the 1st round, and then they went back in the 5th round to get Kyle Williams. I love a good double dip, man, especially at the positions we mentioned. The only thing that unfortunate is that defensive tackle and defensive end, they have guys there where if they keep drafting a few more guys, they're gonna have to start releasing guys because they have a lot of players at that position. I mean, they didn't lose many people. Maybe they trade away AJ Epinesa to make a roster spot for a draft pick, and maybe they're waiting for that before they do it. Maybe they couple AJ Epinesa and a draft pick to move up, or to gain a pick next season. Like that might be something that they do, especially if they find a defensive end that they like really early, and they know that AJ Epinesa might not be on the field because of it. They might try to trade a guy and get a 5th round pick next year, a 4th round pick next year, or something. So yeah.
double dip is the chip.
I love double dipping anything that isn't, a chip dip with other people. I love doing it when it's just it's just you doing it. Double dipping.
That's all you want. It's your ball, right?
I drool into it. I don't give a crap. Yeah, double dip. You can double dip the chip. So John, we're talking cornerback and defensive tackle. Cornerback's our first need. John, you were doing a lot of research onto this with different players. I'll let you take it from here, but I guess these were the kind of attributes we're looking for when you and I are going through the top 100 draft picks, guys that we liked or didn't like depending on their attributes, and this is kind of what we're looking for in a cornerback.
You have athletic, which you would hope every NFL player is athletic, but coverage zone ideal. I like that you wrote ideal because they're gonna have to play man at times too. But the Bills do tend to play zone, so that's good. Long arms, good willing tackler. I like them being able to be a good tackler. No, those are all great things, all great qualities to have. So
Yeah, I read that the Bills run 73% zone coverage. So yeah, I mean, would it be ideal for them to be great at both? For sure. But if you're leaning one way more than the other, probably zone at this point, rather than man. I think that was kind of something that kind of bit us in the backside with Kaiir Elam because he was more of a man corner. But then even when he was asked for man to cover in man coverage in the
I don't know
AFC
if he's good at
Championship game.
either, but he did have a couple of moments early. I don't know. It didn't work out.
Yeah, it's like that everywhere there, dude. I've worked at places where guys come in from other companies or whatever, and they say that they can do whatever, and all you have is an interview to go off of. So whoever hires them, and then within the first 2 months, they're gone because as soon as they hire them, they realize, oh wow, we're paying them a lot of money for not what we thought that they were capable of, or maybe they lied the interview or whatever. So it happens. You can only go on so much. And I remember being super excited about the Kaiir Olympic at the time, but clearly not the guy. So John, let's start with your first cornerback prospect out of Texas, Jahdae Barron, 5'11", 194 pounds, out of Texas.
Especially like a notepad, so I'm kind of a little out of place. But
You're old school, man.
forgive me here. No, but he's got size, speed, athleticism. Right, he's very athletic, just like every potential NFL prospect. No, he's a strong guy, plays good in the zone. My only thing about him is I was listening to Greg Cosell the other day, and he was projecting him to be more, maybe potentially of a slot guy, even though he did play more on the outside this last year. So that was one concern to me, is a weakness, potentially. But if he can play outside like he did this last year and he did fine, then fine. Yeah, great. And that's why I have him in this range here. So ideally, I have Travis Hunter, this is my number one. So I didn't include the top couple guys. I figured Will Johnson wouldn't be there for us.
Yeah, agreed. I'm
But
glad
I
I'm
think
glad you skipped him. I'm glad we're for the most part skipping prospects that we do not think that, I mean, because right now Jahdae Barron is a top 20 pick, but I mean this is a guy that could fall to the Bills at 30, or the Bills could trade up to get him potentially. So you never know.
right. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So that's why I would bring him up here. And for me, it's kind of weird. Like I had the top one or two prospects, and I had like 7, 8, 9, 10 guys that I all liked. So it's difficult for me to narrow it down. That's why I'm not a scout,
Yeah.
but I do like him. I think he's great. But yeah, I think there's some highlights here.
Yep. Sharing some highlights here. Dude, I grew up for some weird reason. There's a couple of teams that I grew up liking. One is Miami Hurricanes when I was a real small kid, like 8 years old, because they were on TV, they were in the national championships, they were the U. And then Texas was the next big team I like, probably because of Vince Young. Just I have a Texas Longhorns hat. You're talking about a guy who I think he's big. I think he's big enough that he could play outside corner. So I'm curious as to why Greg Cosell said he would be more of a slot guy, but there's
What
a lot
he
to,
played like the year before last. That's like what he would played. He played more outside this past year, so I think that's where he's getting it from.
I
So
mean,
he might be able to do both, which is good. The versatility might be good.
he has an RAS score of almost 9, which is basically, if you're unfamiliar with its relative athletic score, which is basically grading all of his height, weight, athleticism, his combine workouts, his 40 time, all that fun, his bench press, all that fun stuff, compared to like all the other cornerbacks that have been drafted or that have, participated in the draft. So he is at a 9. So 9 out of 10, very athletic guy. You know who else was a 9 out of 10? Cole Bishop was a 9 out of 10. And to give you an idea, do you remember what Christian Benford was coming out of college? 8 out of 10. So pretty cool. 8.15. Christian Benford out of Villanova. So I mean, big program, a lot to like. I mean, he's got good instincts. I mean, the Bills walk away on day one, the 30th pick, and they draft Jahdae Barron. I think that you got to be excited about it, especially when he's playing against the Georgias and the Alabamas. I believe he transferred from Alabama to Texas. So I mean, tons of experience in the SEC as a top cornerback. So I love that. I love that idea. All right, John. Enough of Jahdae Brown highlights, Jahdae Barron highlights. Let's go into cornerback Siobhan Revel Jr., 6'2", 194-pound corner out of East Carolina.
Physical, fast. He can tackle. Look at my note. So I can't even read my own handwriting here.
And we did mention
Um,
like McDermott loves a good tackler. If these guys are like the Deion Sanders, where like they like to play the ball, but they do not like to tackle. I mean, they rely on their cornerback so much to tackle that if you see a prospect that's not good at tackling, not that he's average or slightly below, if he's just below average, like they probably won't draft him, I would assume.
and he's great. He's a good press cornerback. He can play zone. Great athlete, just like every single player that that could go into the NFL is a great athlete. Only knock, he had the ACL injury in 2024. So he's got. I'm sure he's going to be fine because it was early on in 2024, but he didn't get to play a full season. But I do like him a lot as a prospect.
So we're looking at his pass coverage grade, 85.4. Man coverage is only 75.3, but his zone coverage is 79.6. That's where he excels. Still not as good as, Jahdae Brown had a 91.5 zone coverage grade, one of the best in Pro Football Focuses. Siobhan Revel Jr., 79.6, not as good, but still above average, well above average there. He's long, 6'2", long arms, lanky. All the prospects are about 190, 195, the ones that we're highlighting. So this guy's no different. It's interesting what you mentioned about the injury to his knee, because if that's a guy that you're looking at, I'm showing some highlights right now on YouTube. If you're looking at that and you're saying, hey, this is a guy we could potentially get on day 2, maybe end of day 2.
And maybe he could be a second-round pick for them.
Yeah, absolutely. A second round pick, one of their 2 second round picks. This is a guy that you can mold into a starter. Maybe you have an option to either do Dane Jackson or, Darren Revel, right? Or Siobhan Revel. It's it's a matter of how does Revel look in camp? Is he up to speed? Is he already outplaying? You know, I think if it's anywhere close, I think they go with Dean Jackson, but this is a guy that could definitely compete with him,
Dean
barring his.
Jackson or Jamarcus Ingram better?
Oh man. Well, I mean, the little that we saw from Jamarcus Ingram, I liked it. Dean Jackson is aging now, and he was never elite to begin with. So whenever it's like that, I have a known commodity and I know what their floor is. Sometimes I like to go with the younger defensive back that has the opportunity to show more, if that makes sense, rather than the low floor guy or the high floor guy, higher floor guy.
Yeah, I think I'd pencil in Ingram as a starter right now over Jackson.
Yeah, you're right. You're probably right. I don't know why Cam Lewis isn't in the discussion because I think that, he's shown pretty well at cornerback. I know he's more of a safety and he's also the backup nickel corner, but at the same time, I think it'd probably go, in my opinion, be like Jamarcus Ingram, then probably Dean Jackson or Cam Lewis next. So I don't know. I'm a big Cam Lewis fan. I think he has opportunity. So
Cam
again,
Lewis, but yeah, I'd have him more of a safety nickel backup, like you said. But yep.
yeah. I mean, again, we talked about this ad nauseum, but in the AFC Championship game, I'm wondering why are you not starting Jamarcus Ingram or Cam Lewis instead of, here we see a big sack by Revel Jr. there on a blitz. Guy's definitely got speed. His RAS score, where it's unknown because he did not test at the combine because of the torn ACL, but the athleticism shows on the tape, man. Obviously
He
not
looks
going to have a
good.
pro day. Yeah.
His highlights look good.
Oh yeah. All highlights look good, right? But this is, I'm a fan.
It's like everybody's athletic.
Yeah, but John, when you're in the midst of all these athletic players, you can still be more athletic. I mean, they're athletic compared to us for sure. The least athletic guy in the combine is more athletic than us by like 5 times, right? Like he just is.
But
But
how do you rate athleticism? Like you're an athlete. Like, yeah, duh.
yeah, so the way that the RAS score does is it does it based on the 40-yard dash, the 20-yard split numbers, the 10-yard split numbers, the shuttle, the 3-cone, how much your vertical is, your broad jump, basically a lot of the measurements that they take at the combine. So yeah, I mean, sure it's limited, it's not all telling, but it gives you an idea, right? So like if you have two players within the same range, like let's say you love both of their skills, like the RAS score or just their combine results in general could be a good tiebreaker for this. So here we see a pass, long pass, Revel Jr. getting in between him and his receiver. Basic breakup. But is this him about to block a field goal, John? What? He just blocked a field goal. Okay. This guy easily gets some special teams reps no matter what, right? He instantly becomes our best special teams player. Cool. I love it. I love it, John. All right. Let's go back to our big board, our draft preview. Let's see. Next, we have cornerback Trey Amos, 6'1", 195 pounds out of Ole Miss, an RAS score of 8.88, and a top 40 pick for Trey. By the way, I forgot to mention that Siobhan Revel Jr. is also a top 40 pick right now. That's where he's being mocked. But Trey Amos is right in that same mix, right about the same area with an RAS score of 8.88 in the top 40.
Trey Amos a lot. Good instincts, size, athleticism. Very athletic, just like all these guys.
Yeah.
No, he plays good in the zone, but he can flip press. He's physical. He can get in there. He's not afraid to get dirty. Me too.
This is another guy here. I'm going to share some highlights of Trey Amos as well. But another guy like roughly in that same exact range, but doesn't have the injury history that Revel Jr. does, right? So, but very super athletic, more athletic than Christian Benford was by the RAS score. Played in a huge conference, SEC. Ole Miss has some good players from their defense in the top, first round, and a lot to like. I mean, it's funny, John. I get excited about these guys, and here we see a lot of like man coverage that we're watching with these clips, but very similar grades to Revel Jr. But you look at these guys, you're like, man, like this could be a great player for the Buffalo Bills. Here we see him in zone coverage, breaking up a pass on a quarterback staring down his receiver. Here we see him in man coverage right now, reading the play, the bubble screen. John, he breaks up that bubble screen. How many times has that bubble screen been run against the Bills? They finally learned how to defend it this season, it feels like. So it's good to see guys that can do that. Long pass, he ends up breaking up. Deep pass. Yeah. I like that, John. John, if you had to pick between the two, Revel Jr. or Trey Amos here, What's that?
You caught me off guard with that question. I don't know. It's tough. It's a toss up for me between those two. And there's other guys too that I like. I like Benjamin Morrison. I like Maxwell Harrison. I like Isaiah Thomas and Darian Porter. Like lots of good prospects at corner. And we mentioned at the beginning of the thing that like corner and defensive tackle and end were good depth wise in this class. So I think you know, picking two corners and two defensive tackles in this draft would be great.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Now we're just talking about the guys. Obviously, there are some corners ranked higher than, the three that we went over, but the ones that we think fit the Bills the best are these guys. So really interesting. Thanks for that, John. Now I'm going to go to my side of it, the defensive tackle position. So,
Excited.
dude, I'm excited. I love talking big men. Man, it's so fun, especially in the defensive side where they get to shoot the gaps and, move people around, eat up blockers. This is another one of those guys or positions where the Bills have a huge need. Now, when looking at defensive tackles for this exercise, I was looking at a few different traits. One is obviously athletic. You want a guy that's athletic.
Yeah, they have to be able to be athletic.
I was thinking about saying unathletic on certain positions, but I think defensive tackle, you want an athletic guy. Punter, long snapper is not as big of a deal, even though Reed Ferguson would probably beg to differ. Large size, I want a guy that can basically be that one technique to take over for Daquan Jones either this season, halfway through this season, the beginning of the season, or next season when Daquan's contract runs up. I mean, I like Daquan a lot.
You want a big guy is what you're saying.
A big guy, a big athletic guy.
Just making sure.
We need someone that when Ed Oliver, this is kind of like a twofold pick because the defensive tackle at this position that plays next to Ed Oliver is going to make Ed Oliver better because he's going to be able to eat up blockers. When Daquan Jones first got here, he was the best defensive tackle we've had playing next to Ed Oliver since Ed Oliver was drafted, since before Ed Oliver was drafted. Star Lotulelei, all these guys that have come and gone. Daquan's the first one that actually stuck and looked good. So, but the fact is he's turning 32. He's not getting any younger. He's not playing poorly, but he's not getting better with age. So it's time to start looking for his replacement because once you get a better guy next to Ed Oliver will play better. And Ed Oliver is not a big guy. He's 6'1", 287 pounds, I think he's listed at. It's a very small defensive tackle. I mean, even going through these draft prospects, it was hard to find a defensive tackle that was smaller than Ed Oliver is. So if you want Ed Oliver to be that penetrating, gap shooting defensive tackle, to make sacks, to get sacks, to make tackles for loss in the backfield on running plays, you need a guy next to him that can eat up blockers and can take those guys away from Ed Oliver, from Joey Bosa, from Greg Rousseau, from anyone around him, and then also clog up the middle so that Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano have clean shots to the running back coming through. So to me, that's the most important trait because you want a guy that can run stuff. And because there are plenty of good defensive tackles in this draft that I have above these guys, that are above these guys just in general as defensive tackles, but they're more of the penetrating Ed Oliver type defensive tackle. And the Bills already have a backup for that in Dwayne Carter. Like that's essentially what Dwayne Carter is, the third round pick out of Duke last year. He's an Ed Oliver-like player. So why get another? Why get a third Ed Oliver? If you're going to draft a defensive tackle in the first round, you're going to get one of two things. You're going to get a Daquan Jones replacement, or ideally, you're going to get a guy that can do both, right? You want an Ed Oliver plus, right? A guy that's bigger than Ed Oliver, but can also do the same thing and also take on double teams, right? Like that's the ideal scenario. So you have a guy that can do both when he needs to. And that leads us to the very first prospect that I'm going to talk about, which is Kenneth Grant, the defensive tackle out of Michigan. Now he's projected as a top 25 prospect. Right now, that's kind of where he's drafted. He is one of the most mocked draft players to the Buffalo Bills. At 6'4", 331 pounds out of Michigan. He has an RAS score of 7.29, not elite, but still well above average. The guy just moves ridiculously well for being that big. And if you're wondering how much bigger he is, I mean, I just mentioned Ed Oliver's like 6'1", 291. This guy is 3 inches and like 40 pounds on Ed Oliver. And this guy can do both. This guy can play the run really well. He's a pass rusher as well. His pass rush win rate is well above average, almost elite at his position. He has a very above average run defense grade that's actually his strength is run defense. He has a rare combination of quickness, size, where he can play the nose tackle position, or in this case, a one technique on the A gap. He has a strength. He can dominate single blocks. He can hold up against doubles when he's in attack mode. He's really just an imposing player. He's got exceptional quickness. Like I'm going to start playing some highlights right now for Kenneth Grant, but you're seeing here. I gotta share this. So you're going to see this. Like the guy does a great job of shooting gaps. There's a clip of him running down a running back or a wide receiver from like 40 yards away, and catches up to him like he does. That famous or DK Metcalf clip of him chasing down Buda Baker like 90 yards down the field. Like Kenneth Grant did that to a wide receiver running back in a way that was reminiscent of that. So I like this guy. Mason is the defensive tackle who could go top 5, top 10 for the Michigan Wolverines. But Kenneth Grant, man, like he just has so much potential. He has incredible overall athleticism for like how big he is, not just to mention like, his RAS score, but he's so big. He can bat passes. He's got active hands. The only problem is sometimes he plays a little bit too high. He loses leverages. His hand usage, his hand, it can be improved. He's still got to work on that. His first step isn't always upfield sometimes, which is, kind of ideal if you're looking for the one tech position. But I mean, there's a lot to like about him. He is my favorite prospect of the guys that the Bills could legitimately get, maybe possibly trade up for, or that could fall for him. So if for whatever reason you're watching the draft and Kenneth Grant drops to the Bills at pick 30, like don't be upset about that. Like be very excited about it. Here we see him tipping up a pass and catching it, intercepting it. Like awesome play by the guy. I mean, it's really cool. It kind of reminiscent a little bit of like a lighter Sam Adams or something, which we haven't had. When was the last time we had like a nose tackle like prospect? So usually those guys go later in the draft, day 2, day 3, but with a guy with this athleticism, this production in a big conference, in a big school, there's a lot to like about him. So I'm a fan of Kenneth Grant. I'm really hoping the Bills draft him, that he falls to them. So the next player I want to discuss is Tyliek Williams, 6'4", 334 pounds, Ohio State. While we're talking about Michigan, why not talk Ohio State? Let's get that rival in there. He did not have an RAS score because he was injured during the combine. While he was doing his pro day, he pulled up with a cramp, which everyone thought while he was running his 40 that he like tore an ACL or something, but apparently it was a cramp. Right now, he's projected as a top 50 pick, somewhere in the top 50, closer to the 50th area, at least by mock drafts right now. As you can see from his Pro Football Focus grades, like he is just so much, he's elite against the run, basically. As big as he is, he's a really good run defender. He's not terrible against the pass, but it's something he's going to need to work on. He's above average. He has above average pass rush win rate. He has a little bit below average of a true pass rush grade. So there's a lot of things he's going to have to work at. But here I'm going to show some highlights right now of him playing, so you get an idea of what he looks like on tape. So here you see him out of Ohio State, number 91. Here he is actually getting to the quarterback. Mentioned he's not as good at getting to the quarterback. First highlight, sacking the quarterback. So he's a very like powerful interior defensive tackle. He doesn't have a great pass rush. If he had a great pass rush, by the way, he'd be a day 1 pick. That's the reason why he's more of a top 50 guy. But he's a versatile, frame. He can play both, nose tackle, one technique, or 3 technique if they need him to. He's got an explosive first step, significant improvement in the hand speed and hand usage this last year. The only problem is though, like sometimes he struggles to hold ground against combo blocks. Sometimes he gives up a little bit too much space. Sometimes, he really needs to improve on his pass rush to get a little bit better, but that's something I think the Bills coaching staff will know getting him. And, this is a guy that you can immediately plug in for early downs, and then maybe you give Daquan Jones or someone else some more pass rushing downs or second down looks or light boxes. You don't start him there, but first down, I think this is a guy that could be there. Here we see him batting down a pass, so against Rutgers. So yeah, or not batting down a pass, just destroying the quarterback from Rutgers. So if you're watching highlights, you're gonna love the guy no matter what. But I like this guy. He's my second favorite prospect at defensive tackle position. So check him out. Next, we're going to go to my third favorite defensive tackle prospect. Again, keeping with the theme of one technique, run block or run defending, guys that eat up blockers. This is Alfred Collins, defensive tackle out of Texas, 6'6", 332 pounds. Unfortunately, we do not have an RAS score for him, but he's projected to be a top 60 guy. This is a guy that they could potentially get with their second round picks at that level. Again, another very similar to Tyliek Williams, elite in run defense, pass rush win rate, again, above average, but not at the level that you'd like to see if he was more of a three technique or a guy that penetrated. But again, we're looking for a guy that can help out Ed Oliver, and a guy that's 6'6", has 5 inches on him and another 40 pounds. Absolutely. I think this is a guy, again, Texas, huge program. The guy they churn out pro athletes, especially with just making the national championship game this last year. I'm going to share some highlights right now so everyone can see this. So again, excellent length for, an interior defensive lineman. He's really strong upper body. He's got really long arms, 6'6". He's got a well-built frame, lower body weight distribution. Like some of these guys are really big guy. I mean, you might say like Tyleek Williams is more of like he's got a really big lower half, where this guy's got more a balanced overside, strong enough to fight through double teams. So not only to hold them up, but to fight through them. The only thing that, are some knocks on him in his game is sometimes he lacks some of the pursuit for plays outside the tackles. He doesn't have the speed to do that. Sometimes he can be slow to disengage and, shed the blocks from the offensive lineman. He plays with a high pad level. That's something they're going to have to work at the next level, just to play a little bit lower. It's very common for some of these guys that don't go top 10, top 20, is that they need to work on their pad level, get a little bit lower. And sometimes he allows, some offensive linemen to get at the inside hand on him at times. But again, you're talking SEC football. He's showing up here. We're seeing stats or highlights from the game against Georgia, right? Where, he's looking tremendous. He's taking down runners in the backfield. Here he is lining up on the defensive end position and taking down the runner in the backfield. So he's going to be a force. He's going to be a force to play with. So to play up against. So if the Bills were to end up with him, at the end of the second round, or at least with their second round pick, this is a guy that I'd be really interested in seeing the Bills pick up. So I like that player a lot. Those are my top 3 defensive tackles. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, if you like any of these players, or if you don't, what you do or do not like about these guys. And then, John, I got to share this one with you that I did not make a slide for, but he's an intriguing prospect that's been going over social media. And this is 6'5", 464-pound Desmond Watson out of Florida. Look at this guy. I know they just showed his stats. They have him 6'5", 414 pounds. This must be like a junior level tape, because he has ballooned up to 464 pounds. But for his size, he's actually pretty athletic, which is kind of crazy for someone that has the opportunity to lose 50, 60 pounds and then be even more athletic. Right now, he's an undrafted guy out of Florida, probably maybe a day 3 pick if anything else. Here he just stripped the ball out and ran 10 yards with it and then fumbled at the end. He's cool. He's just like a man child at the college level. I mean, you just don't see players that are 460. You don't see players that are 400 pounds that often, much less 464 pounds running down the field. So cool. John, as we're finishing up these highlights on Desmond Watson, look at that play. That's one of my favorite plays, is him just taking this player out of, I forget, it's Eastern Michigan or someone, or Marshall, just freaking picking him up by the back of the jersey and slamming him onto the ground. Like, you just don't see that happening. That running back's probably 200 pounds. Just picked him up off the ground. Unbelievable. John, thoughts on any of these defensive tackles? Thoughts on Desmond Watson?
Super athletic. I love it. Anybody that's athletic, for sure. No.
I hate athletic guys, by the way. I hate saying that, the Bills are going to draft an athletic guy, but not a fan.
I don't think Kenneth Grant has any chance in hell of making it to the Bills, but I do love him as a prospect. Alfred Collins, Tyliek Williams, great. A couple other guys in the mix, maybe TJ Sanders or Walter Nolan potentially might be in the mix for the Bills.
So I've seen a lot of Walter Nolan, Derek Harmon going to the Bills in recent mocks, and I think that I just don't think that they're what I was looking for. Those are, again, more like 3 tech penetrating defensive tackles. And don't get me wrong, John, like the Bills could absolutely draft one of those guys. But when I'm thinking about that position in general, let's say you draft another one of those guys. I mean, what are you replacing Ed Oliver on the field? Like, where does a Walter Nolan fit in to this scheme? I mean, is this eventual replacement for Ed Oliver in general? Like, maybe that's the idea. But with a first round pick, don't you want a guy that can start possibly immediately or midway through the first season?
Yeah, I'm not saying a first round pick. I'm saying like
Mhm.
that could be like a second round pick, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the second round pick. Still, though, I think of the second round pick, though, I just don't see them doing it with one of those guys unless they think they can bulk him up. Like some of these guys, like Derek Harmon, I believe he played one technique and then they had him lose weight, and now he's extraordinarily good at penetrating. So he'd have to gain more weight and become that guy that wasn't elite in what he did previously.
Foreman, I see 6'4", 313. Nolan, I see 296. TJ Sanders is 299. Last time I input it in my spreadsheet. So I mean, they're bigger guys. It's not like they're about 300.
No, but they're not exactly what I was looking for when I was
Not
looking.
that 450-pound guy that you were talking about that's undrafted. I know, but
Dick. Yeah, yeah. It's not that guy, but still, yeah. He's not a 464 undrafted guy or a 64-pound undrafted guy like that. But yeah, Bill should just draft all these guys that are undrafted in the 5th round and on, just high upside.
a Giants quarterback, Jared Lorenzen, that was like 400 pounds or whatever.
Yeah, yeah. The hefty lefty. Yeah, I remember him. Loved Jared Lorenzen. I was sad when he passed away. He was so cool. I wish he had succeeded at the NFL level.
So why I didn't even know.
Yeah, don't you feel bad now?
Yeah, I do.
You're such a jerk sometimes. Anyway, no,
Did
yeah, yeah.
he just die?
Not just recently. It was a few years ago.
I had no
Yeah.
idea. What, like, was it like, how did he die? Because he was young, right? Younger.
I want to
I
say
know
it was
he wasn't in the NFL anymore, but like,
he died in 2019 after
I
he
had no
left due to
idea.
cardiovascular disease. Died at 38. Struggled with his weight both during and after his playing career.
Wow,
Yeah, cardiac and renal issues. Sad.
I didn't even know.
So even if this Desmond Watson guy, ends up going to the NFL, dude, I hope the guy does lose weight. Like it goes from 464 pounds to at least like 375, which is crazy to think. You hope he gets to 375, but yeah, those guys are it's tough, man. I mean, John, you're a perfect example. You lost a ton of weight. And when I say a ton of weight, I don't know, what'd you say, like 30, 40 pounds?
Yeah, not accurate, but like 65, 70 probably.
You lost 65, 70 pounds?
Yeah.
I mean, you look like you lost weight. I wouldn't have guessed 65. I didn't think you had 65, 75, 65, 70
I feel
pounds to
like
lose.
I feel like I wore my weight well.
You did. Some people I've heard.
But no, I do feel a lot better, like physically.
Well, that's the thing. Like you probably took away a lot of that, that stress on your heart, or I mean, even if that, just like your back, probably your legs, your knees, all that stuff, by doing that. So that's awesome, man. You know, Anyway, not to get too much. Yeah. Joey Hatch just wrote that lineman from the Gators is 464 pounds. He ran a pretty good 40. Yeah, like it was like 5'8" or something. I think he had like a 25-inch vert. Pretty good. Like not what you would suspect from a guy who was, that big. But I'd absolutely take it. You're telling me 7th round pick? Absolutely take a flyer on him. Sure, why not? So, John, next week or the week after, I think we should talk about next positions. Maybe we go back to our biggest list of Bills needs, and we go from there and we discuss these guys. So we just did cornerback, defensive tackle. If something happens, maybe they sign a cornerback. Maybe we just kind of scratch that from the biggest needs, move that down a few pegs. Defensive end and safety, I think, would be a good one. I know this isn't a good safety draft, unfortunately, but John, what is it a good draft in? Cornerbacks. And what can you sometimes convert? What's a lot easier to convert one way to the other than the other way to one other? It's easier to make a cornerback a safety, right, than the other way around. So
Taking one of their first or second round picks, it's you're not drafting one to convert, I would think.
no, for sure. This is going to be like a day 3 pick, I think, that you're
Like
converting.
the
A double dip.
we should double dip corner and defensive tackle, I think, for sure. The only reason I'm not thinking about that for defensive end, even though there's a higher need, is because we're going to put all our eggs in one basket with Joey Bosa.
Yep.
Hope that works out. But yeah, I think safety's still a need. And then like after that, after those first four, it's really just defensive line and corner and defensive back. Because after that, like they've made it work with receiver and running back. Like I'll say it again, they're a dime a dozen. If it doesn't work out with Cook, if he holds out, it's a good class. Sign another guy. Punter, I might even put punter at number 5. I don't know. I think they need a punter. Sam Martin's not even on the team anyway, so like they need a punter. That you might move that up.
Yeah, that's a pretty good point. Hey, I'm glad you brought up James Cook, John, because when we were mentioning extensions earlier, we talked about Bernard, Shakir, Allen, Benford, Rousseau. I mean, these are all guys that took like modest contracts. I mean, they didn't go out for the top 5 money for the most part, besides Allen, but I mean, he deserves top 5 money. He still did. He's still like ranked. He's still tied with like 4 other quarterbacks now at this level, just at this level. But James Cook wants 15 million a year. Now, here's a guy who's been the most outspoken about his contract, and he wants to be paid like a top 5 running back. And he's the only one that hasn't gotten a contract extension. So maybe there's something to say about that. Like you said, I agree that they're a dime a dozen. I think Cook's really good. I think that he took a big step this last year. But you're also talking about a guy who benefited from one of the best offensive lines in football. You're talking about a guy who doesn't play all the passing downs because they don't necessarily trust him in pass pro. Another reason why they re-signed Ty Johnson. So if you're gonna pay a guy top 5 money, he better be Saquon Barkley. He better be, a LaDainian Tomlinson, his prime sort of running back. That's got to be their level. I'm not going to pay James Cook anywhere close to 15 million. If I had to grade it out, it'd probably be more like 7-8 million maybe a year. And even then I'd be reluctant just because, like you said, they're
That's stingy for me even. No, I agree.
that's stingy. Would you go 10? Where would you go?
I might go 10, but I love Cook, but you can't. You heard me complain about it all through the drought. Like they're like drafting like Willis McGay in the first round, like CJ Spiller, or they're trading for LaShawn McCoy, and like Travis Henry was a second round pick if you go that far back. All these guys, it didn't do diddly squat because they needed a quarterback. Okay, now they have a quarterback, so I know it's different, whatever. But like maybe look at other positions because the Fred Jacksons of the world were still pretty okay. Like, Marshawn Lynch, he was another first round pick that got away. But I don't know. You can't.
Yeah, that was definitely something.
This is a good running back class too. Like if they wanted to actually draft somebody in the middle rounds this year, they have all these 4th and 5th round picks or whatever. Maybe, somebody falls to them, they pick a guy, and all right, they're set for the next 5 years. Like I don't know.
Yeah, that's yeah. I remember you saying that all the time that in the draft or in the drought, like these guys are a dime a dozen, and I agree. Like when it comes down to it, would I rather pay James Cook 10 million a year or draft another running back, in this draft and hope that between Ray Davis, Ty Johnson, and this new running back that they can be just as good as James Cook or better. I'd rather do that, honestly.
He's not like he's really good, but he's not a Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, or Christian McCaffrey. You can't fall into that and drain money into that position.
Joey asked a really good question. He said that they said that there's another player that we should extend before James Cook, and that player is Connor McGovern because his contract ends at the end of this year. Which one do you think is more important, John? Is that even a question in your mind between Connor McGovern and James Cook? I like the question because I forgot about Connor McGovern's contract being up this year.
How old is Connor McGovern?
I believe he's 29. I want to say 28.
Yeah, that's the case. For some reason, there's a lure, but yeah, McGovern, I think is keeping the offensive line intact. I think is important at this point.
He is 27. He's even younger. Absolutely resign him. Absolutely. Dude, that's the thing about like James Cook playing better. It's because of guys like Connor McGovern. If you want to rank the most important Bills players at their respective positions on the offensive line, I think it goes Deion Dawkins, Spencer Brown, Connor McGovern. And then right now the guards are pretty good, but I think you could possibly upgrade Torrance or David Edwards potentially, but you can't definitely upgrade at center. So I would like the Bills to try to keep him if they could.
Morris, and they're like, you're screwed, blah 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 blah. Like, Bean and McDermott.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. John, anything else to end on this podcast before we end the first Bills draft prospects episode? Anything else? I think we're good.
Hey man.
You say you love me?
Sure.
Sometimes the first part thing you say cuts out real quick. It must be the internet connection, but yeah, I love you too, man. Love you too.
For sure.
That's not what you said. All right, John. Thank you guys all for listening. Thank you guys for commenting in, for being a part of this. If you haven't, please subscribe, like, follow. Let us know some of the prospects that you want to talk about. So we're talking about cornerback and defensive tackles in this episode. If there's a guy you want us to talk about or discuss next week that you think might be a better fit, or a guy that you like late in the draft, we can discuss that guy. And then we can go over defensive ends and safeties next week after. So it'll be a fun discussion to have. So thank you guys for all subscribing, commenting, liking the episode, whether you're hearing it on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you share it on whatever platform, tag us and we'll share it as well to kind of get the word out there and promote your social media handle as well. So appreciate all you guys doing this. So thank you for listening. As always, it's a fun time of year. It's always fun to talk draft prospects with you guys and really get excited. It's kind of like, I always liken to the draft being like Christmas Day. It's like, when can we get these fun new toys, and how long can we play with them before they break or whatever? So it's going to be a fun time. So signing off for John and for me, Nate, go Bills, and we'll talk to you guys again soon.
Thank you for listening to the Circling the Wagons podcast. Download and subscribe to us in your favorite podcast service. Email us at ctwpod@gmail.com. That's Charlie Tango Whiskey Pod @gmail.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at CTWPod. And most importantly, go Bills!
Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills.
Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills, Nate.
Well, listen, the whole show is called Circling the Wagons. Say no more. I love it.